Looking to capitalize on Chucky mania, the franchise pushed Child's Play 3 out into theaters just 10 short months after the release of Child's Play 2. The film was not received well by critics, by fans, or even the father of the franchise, Don Mancini, who has called Child's Play 3 his least favorite of the franchise. It is his least favorite of anything Chucky. Now that being said, if you've seen this review series, you know I called the first film an instant classic. And then I called Child's Play 2 one of the best direct sequels in horror cinema. So, what am I going to call Child's Play 3? I think I'll call it underappreciated. To elaborate on that opening, let me just say this. If you are a Child's Play 3 hater, I get it. I once was one of you. I first saw this movie and I was like, whoa, who is this? That ain't Alex Vincent. That ain't my Andy. I saw this movie when I was probably 10, 11 years old, and I'd only seen Child's Play 1 and Child's Play 2. And because of the age I was when I watched those films, I really related to Andy Barclay as portrayed by Alex Vincent. That was my boy. That was who I saw a lot of myself in as he was stripped from his mother, as he had his whole entire life derailed, and as he squared off against Chucky, this killer doll imbued by the spirit of a serial killer. So all of a sudden, when you're asking a younger Nate to get on board with somebody who has the same name but does not have the same face as Andy, it was a bitter pill to swallow, and I did not do a good job. I may have coughed it up and refused to swallow said pill, especially when I realized we were going to spend a majority of the runtime in a very structured, very organized, very dull, boring, bland, gray setting like a military school. And I was beginning to wonder, is the entire movie going to take place? Because I just cannot do that. And then I got to look at that barber and all of his campy weirdness that felt unlike anything that happened in Child's Play 1 or Child's Play 2. And I was like, yeah, we have jumped the shark. I don't know why I was like 10 years old and knew what jumping the shark meant. But for the purpose of this review, I said, we have jumped the shark. But now, as a grown man who has watched a lot of horror sequels, I gotta tell you, you can do a whole hell of a lot worse than Child's Play 3. In fact, if Child's Play 3 is considered as in the running for one of the worst entries in your franchise, you have yourself a very strong, very commendable franchise. So let's talk about this movie. Let's talk about its warts, talk about its problems, but also talk about why I think it is a fantastic follow-up to what we saw in Child's Play 2. 1, Justin Whalen. For all the hatred you've probably absorbed in your lifetime for replacing Alex Vincent as Andy, you did a very solid job, man. Now that I've watched this movie with open mind, you do a very good job portraying an older Andy. I really get from your performance that you've lived a tortured life, that you have bounced from foster home to foster home, and you carry this sort of trauma that you can't share with anybody because you'd be shackled up and thrown into a loony bin. He really does a good job of conveying that, everybody. I don't know what else we want from him. It's not his fault that the role was recast. They had to do something. This is what happens when studios get a little money hungry. So if you can just get on board with that, I think you'll see he's very good, very, very suitable Andy. The military setting. On first watch, like I said, I was like, I can't do this the entire movie. Well, you don't have to do it the entire movie. In fact, you get some fun juxtaposition and you get some dark themes that they actually do with that military setting, because we have these young kids that are kind of being brainwashed and set to commit pretty much sanctioned murder. They're out there toting guns and shooting at each other. And you put that up against a real murderer, somebody who actually does love murder, and you kind of get some subtext, especially when Chucky swaps out the play ammunition for the live round. And that's one of the darkest little sequences in anything Child's Play. That moment where one of their comrades is struck by a real bullet, and everybody quickly realizes what is happening, and the music kind of fades out, and all you have is that maniacal cackling laughter of Charles Lee Ray. That is a high point in the movie. It's also a high point in the franchise because it's just so dark, seeing the life drain out of this boy who just lived for all things military, and that ends up being his undoing because he just happened to come and cross paths with Chucky, with Charles Lee Ray, just like so many before him and so many after him in this franchise. I love seeing that when they're kind of overzealous and having fun and war games. Oh, this is fun. And then you get hit in the face with, no, this is what war is. And I don't think this scene could happen today because it is so dark and it is so heavy to see kids killing one another with a gun. Obviously, in this current climate, probably not going to happen. But on a lighter note, The military school offers some fun new characters. And yes, one of my biggest problems with this movie is that because of that time jump and because we were looking to avoid redundancy, we don't get to continue the relationship of Kyle and Andy. I think that would have been the natural progression, right? Because they were so beloved and they had this nice relationship that we could have further explored over several entries in the franchise, and we just don't get to do it. It falls by the wayside, and that's a shame because I think if we had more time with those two and got to see their dynamic flourish and explore it even further, they would have become not just the two most beloved characters in this franchise, but two iconic, most beloved characters in all of horror cinema history. Now, that being said, in the absence of Kyle, at least we do get a badass in De Silva, and we get Tyler, who is now like a stand-in for Andy, because that is who Chucky is setting his attention on.
Just think, Chucky's gonna be bro.
And Tyler is played great by his child actor, and he's very cute and very lovable and very naive and innocent and very vulnerable, which makes him a great inclusion in the movie. My only problem with Tyler is, Tyler, what the fuck did you do before you came to military school, bro? You are so much younger than everybody. Why did your parents send you here? What is going on? Are you part of the foster program? Why are we sending kids to military school at this young? That's dark. Does that happen? Because that's gross. And then aside from him, you also get some stock military characters that you just love to hate. You know, the ones that want to eventually go on and be in charge and to be rubbing people's faces in the muds and spitting in their face and calling them slurs and doing things like that, that they think that that is the way to live your life. Well, you know what? If you think that's the way to live your life, then you probably deserve to get deaded in a slasher movie. And slasher movies need characters that we want to see get killed off. You gotta have characters that you just love to hate.
The most pathetic thing I have ever seen!
Previously, I touched on that wacky, zany barber and how I did not like him when I was a younger viewer. Now I'm an older viewer, and I've come to love camp in my horror movies, especially wherein it is placed properly, and it is placed properly in Child's Play 3, because this rigid, structured setting at the military school needed some zaniness pumped into its veins just to have a little something different, to bring some life and some amusement into the process, if you will. And they do that with this character, and he's a little bit of a nod of what is to come in this franchise, because after this comes Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky and Curse and Cult, and we're just going to get way wackier, way more lighthearted, and way more goofy, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I've actually come to kind of like this guy when he does with
Presto, you're a ball.
And he allows for another one-liner by Chucky with Presto, you dead, which is, of course, instantly memorable and a nice little catchy one-liner. And Chucky's on his game in this movie. They are steadily upgrading Chucky with these films.
I'm new and improved.
He, again, has had improvements made to his appearance. They've done things to where he has more realistic facial expressions, and his mouth now syncs with the ADR a little bit better, which means that you have to suspend your disbelief even less, which is a good thing, because you're already having to suspend it so much because this is about a killer doll. And, you know, Brad Dourif is always giving you a gung-ho, amazing performance, so anything we can do to not lessen his work and his efforts, I'm all for it. So the doll looks great, and he's doing these dark, dark murders, like that poor old man who's driving the garbage truck, and Chucky baits him into the back, where you have that weird torture-ass device that's kind of like crunching him down and splicing him up, and that's one of them where theater of the mind takes over. You don't see it, but you kind of feel like you do, and that's always a great thing for a horror movie to pull off. Definitely happens with that kill. I don't know how, but I always feel so bad for that guy. You know, we don't see him very much. We see him just for a short bit, but you kind of like, no, not this guy. Come on, he's a good old guy. He's probably got a wife at home and kids and grandkids. Oh, God, that's a bad fucking way to go. Just like what happens in the mock war games. So, Chucky gets some good kills. He gets some great one-liners. He's inching more and more towards Freddy Krueger territory in this movie because he's getting funnier and he's getting to be a little bit more quippy, and his kills are getting a little bit more elaborate. So I like what they do with him. And then, of course, that third act. If you needed this movie to be redeemed, if you couldn't get on board yet through 2 acts, if you were kind of on the edge of, like, I don't know if I like this or I dislike it, I have to believe that third act is going to sway you over into the territory that you go, you know what? This is a good movie. This is a good horror sequel, because slashers need fun settings, and you can't do much more fun than you can do at the carnival. And you get that in here. You get the whirring lights. You get the roller coasters. You get the people playing games. You get the family and friends from suburbia going out to have a good Saturday night, not having any clue that a slasher is amongst them and that his spirit is inside of a freckle-faced little doll. That's awesome stuff. And so is seeing Chucky do his thing in an area where you have machinery popping out and the animatronics doing their thing, and it allows for jump scares and it allows for tension because you don't know where he's going to be as he stalks after Tyler, and you have Andy stalking him, which is also a new sort of plot point and something that makes it a little bit fresh, is that Andy is on the offensive in this movie. But then also the way in which Chucky, who is a very strong Chucky in this movie, is disbanded. The way that they get rid of him in this movie, it is a fantastic death for your slasher killer. I've talked a lot in this review about things you have to have in a slasher movie. Well, if you're gonna have a slasher icon, you have to have iconic deaths. You have to dispatch them in very memorable, fun fashion, and they do that because when Chucky falls and he hits that fan, he just erupts. He explodes and there's gore and viscera everywhere. They really did pack a lot of blood in that little doll body, and I love it. That is how you put a cap on your movie. That is how you do something fun and bold and brazen. You don't just do a bullet into the chest of Chucky, and we never have. You think about the first movie where he gets charred and he gets pieces blown off, he even loses his head, and he just keeps coming. And that happens in the second movie, to where he rips his hand off and he sticks a knife into the bloody stump, and he will not be deterred. He will not take no for an answer, and he does that again in this movie. And I don't know that Child's Play gets enough credit for its antagonist being so unrelenting and so vicious. I think it's easy to dismiss Chucky as this little pint-sized goofball who's you could just punt. But that's not necessarily true. These movies do such a good job of putting him in places where he can get the jump on you, to where his victims are unsuspecting or outthought, outwitted. And so the fact that he is able to do those things and the plot allows for him to have the edge on people, and that even when he doesn't have the edge, he's going to find a way because he will not be denied, then you're doing great things to bolster your film and your villain. And for all these reasons, for the great characters, for the fun settings that are kind of juxtaposed and allow a certain amount of subtext, and for a bloody, grisly, fun, well-lit, exuberant third act, then I think you have to say that this is a pretty damn good sequel, and it definitely doesn't deserve to be the bottom of the franchise. This is not a bad movie, people. I love Halloween. I love Friday the 13th. I love Nightmare on Elm Street. I love Texas Chainsaw. I have seen bad slasher sequels. This is not a bad slasher sequel. This is a really good one. This film is underrated. Those are my thoughts on Child's Play 3. Of course, like always, be sure to let me know your thoughts on this film. Am I way off track? Tell me what's so bad about Child's Play 3 if you think that I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid over here. But if you get it, I'm glad you get it. What's up, fellow Child's Play 3 fan? Have yourself a great day. I'm Nate for natemareflix, and that's a wrap.